What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Red Room Podcast. Today, I got a really great friend sitting across from me, Spud.
Hey,
How are you? How are you, dude?
All right. Blake, I'm really nervous. Can I interview you? You're the real star.
Stop it. Stop it. So,
Right.
so Spud, tell me about life, man. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get to Silicon Valley? Let's kind of like dive into
I knew
it.
you were going to ask that first.
Yeah. So
All
where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Montreal, Canada.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I lived the first kind of like 12, 13 years of my life there. And my mom had visited California in the 70s and decided the weather's much better out in California than Canada.
Yeah.
It's freezing here.
Yeah.
And just decided to move us out to California. And one of my first memories is coming out here with her just on a vacation and going to a record store and finding the Beach Boys' Endless Summer double album and thinking, this is like the soundtrack to California. I got to buy this. And I feel like that was a turning point in my life where that music kind of made me think, I belong in California.
So was right here, Northern California, was this like the first spot you came to, or were you guys looking at like Los Angeles too, Southern California? Like what made this home?
My mom had friends out here, and we stayed here with some friends in San Mateo. So when we moved out here, we just liked San Mateo. It felt central to everything. It was close to the city. It was close to San Jose, close to the beach, close to the East Bay. And we thought San Mateo kind of makes sense. So I've been in San Mateo ever since. And I feel like if I never move again, I'm still happy being here.
Yeah, I mean, you know where everything is. You know
Right,
what I mean? You
that
don't have
too.
to, you don't have to go far. You know,
Right,
I know the neighborhood.
it just feels like home.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, like the back of your hand. You know,
Right,
that's
right.
it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for me too, it's like Santa Cruz. Just growing up, you know, born and raised there, it was like the same thing. It's just what I love about this state in particular is just the fact that it's like, and I haven't done one of these, but I really want to. Where you wake up super early in the morning and you go surfing, and then you all hop in the car and drive up to like Tahoe and go skiing like in the same day.
I've thought of that too. But it's funny you should mention Santa Cruz because when we first came here, we stayed at the Dream Inn in Santa Cruz. And that's one of my
Classic.
favorite memories
Yeah.
of just being in California. And it's like, wow, this is such a cool place. you
Yeah.
know? So I definitely feel kind of a closeness to Santa Cruz. And I keep, thinking I'm going to move down there, but I love San Mateo too. So San Mateo, Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is probably my home away from home.
Yeah. You're close. You're close.
Right,
You know,
right.
if
It's
you
just
make
an
the
hour
move,
away.
I know a real great realtor that you can, reach out to.
Okay. What's his name?
Right. So we're both wearing, Hawaiian shirts. So let's kind of like dive into that kind of what got you into that kind of music. And, I know you're a singer, you have your own band, which is on your hat, by the way, Drifting Sands. And we'll get into
Right,
that in a moment. But like, what kind of got you into music? What was that moment?
I would have to say my first memory is my brother taking me to see the movie American Graffiti.
Classic.
And
Love that.
and love the scene where they're listening to Surf and Safari in the car, and Mackenzie Phillips says, "Turn that off. I'm not into that surf." Well, she says something else, but maybe I can't say that on the air.
You can say it.
I'm not
You're
into
good.
that surf music.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Come on, the Beach Boys are boss." And I just remember that song just striking a chord with me.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, after that, I bought the Endless Summer compilation, Beach Boys double set.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Beach Boys has just kind of been in me since the 70s. I feel like it's the soundtrack to California. It's a music that drew me out here and to the whole beach and surf lifestyle, which is basically just, it's a great vibe. It's hanging out at the beach. It's going surfing. It's girls and cars and good vibes. And it just felt right, and it was definitely, as far as like living in cold, freezing Canada, I felt like
Completely different.
nothing against Canada, but I felt like I belong in California.
Yeah.
When I came here, I felt like I came home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you like me too. I grew up listening to like the Beach Boys, and what I loved about their music in particularly was just the harmonies. want to touch in on that and why that was so like monumental for like a band of the Beach Boys during that era in the California sound?
I think I probably took the harmonies for granted, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, right.
It was just the songs. It was just the feeling of those songs, and I feel
nostalgic, like
I don't know if it was nostalgic because
vibes.
I was like, a kid at the time.
Yeah.
But it was just something about the music that felt right.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I've noticed about Beach Boys songs when they come on the radio or they come on, whenever I'm listening to them, I never think, oh, not that song again. I got to turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
It's always like I hear the beginning of Wouldn't It Be Nice or Good Vibrations or God Only Knows. And I just think, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful feeling to hear that music. And I feel like it's timeless.
It is.
And it just makes me feel good about life.
Yeah. I mean, just like growing up and going to the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, can't tell you how many summers I would be just walking down that main strip and hearing, and there's, people, eating the funnel cakes and the, vanilla chocolate dipped ice cream and like, the sky riders going overhead and the screams from the, the Giant Dipper going by. And it made surf culture and beach culture what it is today. You just kind of wonder what that scene would be like if the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean and all these guys like didn't have that musical influence on that, what the culture would be like. I think they shaped it in such a way where it really like just made it what it is,
Without a doubt. It's the soundtrack to my life. It inspired me to start my own band, Drifting Sand. And I felt like I just wanted to keep that spirit, that beach spirit going.
Yeah.
For as long as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And that was the inspiration why I started Drifting Sand in the 90s. And I just I've always loved surf music. I've always loved the Beach Boys. And I like the idea of marrying those two kind of genres together. Instrumental surf music like Dick Dale and the Ventures, the Shantays, all those classic instrumental surf bands. And then also the vocal surf bands, the Beach Boys, Jan and Dean, Fantastic Baggies, those bands too. And I just think it's just a cool vibe that is the soundtrack to California.
So with this music, this love for music in your heart, you eventually went into radio DJing, correct? So we'll talk about that. I'd love to hear about that.
All right. Where do I start here?
Yeah.
So when I first saw Star Wars, it convinced me I want to be a filmmaker. So I majored in film.
Great movie. We love talking about our Star Wars.
I know. That's a whole nother episode, right?
That could be
That's a whole nother conversation.
We'll bring Spud on for part 2. We'll just talk Star Wars.
I can talk Star Wars forever.
Right?
Yeah. But Star Wars made me want to become a film director. I wrote my own scripts. I made my own storyboards. I was fully convinced that I want to go into filmmaking. And so I went to the College of San Mateo. I got a degree in film. Then I transferred to San Francisco State. I got a BA in film. I was ready for a career in film. And like a week after I literally got my degree, I was also into a radio station called Live 105. And I used to listen to a show that they had by a guy named Steve Masters. He had a show that played like all alternative music. And I loved the show. And I used to call up all the time and make requests. And one day when I was calling up, he said, you know this music really well. Instead of calling in and making these requests, why don't you come in and write down the requests for me? Because no one's doing that right now.
Did he literally say that like over the air to you?
He didn't say it over the air.
Oh.
Yeah. He said it to me he said it to me off the air.
Yeah.
But I did win some pretty cool contests from him.
Yeah.
And he said, so yeah, come on and be my intern, So I sent in a resume. He told me who to get in touch with, and I started coming in and writing down the songs that people wanted to hear. That was back in the day when radio played every song that listeners wanted to hear. Nothing was programmed. And he said, basically, wow, this music inside out. You should work here. And after 6 months of interning for free, I got a job there, basically driving around the DJs to different clubs when they did promotions. And then I just realized I love this music. I'm just going to stay here for the time being, and it took me away from film, but it also made me realize because I love music so much, I'm really happy here,
Yeah. And that's right there is the most important part is being happy. And so how cool is that you get a, because you're so versatile in your music knowledge. I say this because if you look at this man's record collection at his house, it is exactly to that point. You know so much. So you're giving people, like on your show, you're giving people the opportunity to listen to real cool tracks that maybe they haven't heard before, And I think like that's neat. So you have this like this you gotta touch like people's hearts and minds from across the radio waves, man. How cool is that?
Well, I want to say too that in life, if you think you're focused on this and that's the only thing you can do, don't always think that. If you have other interests, I mean, at one point when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronomer. It's like I love space. I love the stars.
Yeah.
I love the constellations. And I thought, I'm going to become an astronomer,
Yeah.
And then, like I said, then I saw Star Wars, wanted to become a filmmaker. Then I got into the radio station Live 105 and realized, well, I love music too. I think the only thing that I sometimes get sad about is I want to do everything and there's not enough time, to do everything that I want to do. So I feel like, okay, try and focus on this one thing right now, and I ended up staying at Live 105, just working myself up the ladder for like 21 years.
Wow. That's cool. So what was that point where you're like, I've done this and I want to move on to the next thing?
Well, that decision was kind of made for me at the radio station. As radio stations were downsizing, at one point they decided, hey, and I didn't take it personally because it wasn't like, hey, we want to get rid of you. It was more like, well, we don't think this position is necessary anymore. And radio was getting tighter and tighter. So I was, my position was eliminated. They said, don't take this personally.
Yeah.
And I don't think I really did because I felt like, well, I was there for 21 years. I can't complain,
Yeah.
And then because I had a mutual friend who worked for one of the Beach Boys, he just said, he asked me, hey, what are you doing now? And I said, well, I had a really nice severance. So I said, I'm just kind of hanging out. I was also trying to do my own indie rock station for a couple of years. And he said, well, one of the Beach Boys needs an assistant. Are you interested in doing that? Because I've been a Beach Boys fan for the longest years. I'm like, I'll think about that for a fraction of a second. And the answer is yes,
So what was like, you say a fraction of a second, but what was like that moment where they're like, hey, come and work for the Beach Boys? I mean, like, how, like, you've listened to them your whole entire like life and childhood, and it's this really cool moment where you're like, oh my gosh, yes, absolutely, without a doubt, I know every single one of their songs. I love their.
I think I was in a dream when my friend said, can I give your number to Al Jardine of the Beach Boys? And I said, can you give my number to him? I'm like, well, yeah, And then one day he just called me up and we chatted and I said, he said, well, I kind of need an assistant. And I said, well, I'm available,
Yeah.
And, then I met with him down in Carmel and I got hired on the spot and he said like, yeah, let's see welcome to Team Jardine. I work for Al Jardine of the Beach Boys and it's a dream come true. And I think the most important lesson I learned is a lot of times people have asked me, if you didn't work in radio, what's your plan B? And I always thought, I don't really have a plan B, but when the time is right, I feel like I'll know what to do. I don't know if that's the best strategy in life, but I always feel like sometimes things just happen,
Yeah.
And don't try so hard to plan things because without knowing what's going to happen, sometimes things just fall in your lap.
Yeah. Yeah. So little history about the Beach Boys. So Mr. Jardine was best friends with Brian Wilson and the Wilson brothers.
Right.
And he ends up joining the band back in the day. And what was their very first song?
Well, back in the day, Al and Brian went to the same college together. And I believe that Al actually, proposed to Brian the idea about doing the song Sloop John B. And then Dennis Wilson comes around and he's the only surfer, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, this new fad called, surfing. And he convinces Brian, it's like, hey, let's do a song about surfing. And they write the song Surfing. And that actually becomes a hit. And next thing you know, the Beach Boys get signed. And their first big hit is Surfing. And after that comes Surfing Safari and Surfing USA. And next thing you know, the Beach Boys are signed to Capitol Records. And, the rest is history, right?
And so it's funny too, because Dennis, from what I know too, was the only surfer in the band, correct?
Well,
A little bit. Other did they tried, a little
I
bit.
think they all kind of got their feet wet.
Yeah.
And I know Bruce also surfed.
Yeah.
But Dennis was a real surfer. And, in my band, we once wrote a song called Brian Speaks for Dennis, because I feel like Dennis had the idea for surfing. Brian just wanted to write songs.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you got a hit song on your hands. And the band is, becoming like the biggest band in the country.
So the Beach Boys start off with all this great, music right from the beginning, all the poppy, fun stuff. And then Pet Sounds rolls around. And I want to hear your thoughts on why that was such a monumental album for people listening. It had God Only Knows, Wouldn't It Be Nice? I think from what I know, they had this huge rival with the Beatles. Right. And so Brian was like, we need to change something up. Right. We need to change something up. We need it with they're beating us. Just from the little stories that I've heard. And then they come out with, this album. And from when it first came out, people were like, what is this? And But now it's Billboard has it as the number 2 or number 1 album. Correct me if I'm wrong, of all time.
Sure. Billboard and Rolling Stone. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was so monumental about that album from your perspective, being such a huge
I think
fan?
if you go back in Beach Boys history, Brian was already writing songs called The Lonely Sea and In My Room that were already showing that he had, basically the capacity to go beyond the surf songs and write songs that were more emotional, deeper. So I think it was a natural evolution. If you listen to the Beach Boys today and Beach Boys Summer Days and Summer Nights, you started hearing hints of Pet Sounds on those albums. So I think it was just a natural progression for the Beach Boys to move on, Brian progressing in his songwriting abilities. And after that, he just started, he met up with Tony Asher, who wrote most of the lyrics for Pet Sounds. He started using the Wrecking Crew after he was introduced to the Wrecking Crew by Jan Berry, and just realized that, I can just take the Beach Boys to a much higher level. And it just felt like a natural progression for the Beach Boys to go from, Beach Boys Today, Beach Boys Summer Days and Summer Nights. And next thing you know, you have Pet Sounds after Brian had heard Rubber Soul and thinking wow, this is amazing. I gotta take the Beach Boys to the next level. I think he thought of Rubber Soul as kind of a concept album.
Yeah.
And he just took the Beach Boys to that next level. And I think I'm just blown away at how he had all these songs in his head. And it wasn't just the songs and the lyrics, but it was everything from the drums to the bass lines to, and basically Brian telling the Wrecking Crew, hey, do this on this song and do this on that song. And I think that's really the genius level, where you think one guy who's deaf in one ear is hearing all these sounds in his head.
Yeah. I mean, it's the prodigies. It's the gods of music when you really think about it. I mean, speaking of Beethoven, let's go way back. That dude was completely deaf. Right, and he would have to feel the vibrations on the piano, but he wrote these beautiful songs, you know? So it's these people that come by that just absolutely just change the course of history. For those of you that don't know, and I'd love for you, what and who were the Wrecking Crew? So for people that don't know who they are, that are watching this.
The Wrecking Crew were a group of musicians, basically session musicians, who worked with Phil Spector. And I think they just had an unconventional approach to music. And they, unlike probably big band musicians, they were like the punks of their day, really, And basically they started working with Phil Spector and doing all these cool songs, Be My Baby by the Ronettes. And when Jan Berry first was aware of them, he introduced them to Brian Wilson, and then Brian realized, wow, these guys are pretty incredible. I want to work with these guys. And he started working with them and realized that they can really, Phil Spector was basically known for what's called the wall of sound. If you listen to all those early Phil Spector recordings, that's the sound that he was known for. And basically just this, the Wrecking Crew were all just amazing musicians who put this sound together that Brian tapped into and realized this is what I want for the Beach Boys, and I think the Beach Boys are okay with it because at the time they were out touring, all over the country and even the world. I think they were in Japan at the time that Brian was recording, Pet Sounds, and just realized that I can take it to a whole new level with these incredible musicians like Don Randy, Hal Blaine, Carol Kay,
Yeah.
So.
And then from there too, I mean, the Wrecking Crew, they were working with like all the big people that from like the Laurel Canyon, like Echoes in the Canyon, like scene, right? Like
there's a really great documentary out called The Wrecking Crew.
Yeah.
That, you should check out, that basically tells their whole story, where they came from, how they formed, and all the songs that they played on, because you're going to hear all these songs from the 60s and think, wow, that was the Wrecking Crew, And it's pretty amazing what they were able to do, because they were creative musicians too, who introduced new drum parts, Hal Blaine, bass parts, Carol Kay, into these songs that I think that the original musicians were like, wow, okay, you're taking our songs,
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the coolest moments in my life was being able to get a private tour at United Recording and East West Studios. And
right.
And being able to go into those rooms where not only the Beach Boys, but all these real big stars recorded all their major hits.
Right.
And for East West, walking into Studio 3, I actually think I was wearing this shirt like
Really?
for the photo. I think I have a photo, but and seeing how small it was. I mean, and just like and compact, and you're like, oh yeah, like this is where Scott McKenzie recorded If You're Going to San Francisco, and the Mamas and the Papas recorded, California Dreamin' here, and this is the piano that Brian touched, and wouldn't it be like all, and you're like, I'm sitting, and I'm like touching the piano, and I'm like, this is wild, because I'm a huge history guy. So like in all facets of it, so being able to like, here's the piano, or like all these classic songs that everybody knows and loves. Every summer you hear them on the radio. It's like, this is the instrument where the man sat down and did all of that. It was cool to be in those rooms. And then it was like fun stuff too over at like United. I remember getting a tour there, and they were like, I think it was like the same day. And they're like, oh yeah, see the bathroom right here? Yeah, this is where Michael Jackson kept his pet monkey when he was recording, next door. And the Foo Fighters recorded Learn to Fly in the same room that the Beach Boys recorded Help Me Rhonda in. And I'm like, what? Wow. And like Green Day did American Idiot down the hallway, and then Kanye and all those guys and Jay-Z recorded down the hall over here. And it's just like, it's, and it's sad, speaking of, kind of jumping into like a little bit of real estate, but now they're getting rid of all the studios. I think United's gone now, or they're trying to sell it because, like what we're doing here, I can now record songs and do things off of this little computer in front of me versus what, they had back in the day. So it's kind of sad to like see the history, because the tonality in the rooms and the wood that they use and just like everything about it,
sure.
It's like, it's so epic and historical, but they don't need it anymore. So it's like, oh, we're just going to turn them into condos. And I'm like, don't. I think I heard a rumor.
But you have to take the conversation in this direction.
I know. I heard a rumor like the Viper Room on Sunset.
Really?
They were talking about tearing that down, but now they're saying that they're just going to build apartments on top of it or whatever. And I'm like, you just got to keep like Hollywood, like all those classic things. Like I just read the Arby's sign on Sunset right there, or Hollywood Boulevard, the giant Arby's hat. They're taking that down. It's like all these little things that are like slowly like kind of going away. And I think, kind of going to like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when, talking with like Mark London. Mark, what's up if you're watching this? Mark was talking about how he was like watching the transformation of Sunset Boulevard to make it look like how it was like back in the 60s. And you're seeing like the videos of that. It was pretty cool. Like, to the exact detail of like, this store was here and they like brought it back and everything. It's just interesting to see how the times kind of change.
These are just all the things that affect us. I mean, we don't know back in the day of Mozart and Beethoven, right? Mm-hmm. What changed in their lifetime. And so it's, I think I try and approach it from the mindset of, I'm grateful that I got to experience it.
Exactly.
when it was a thing.
Yeah.
And I was there. I went to shows there. You know, I used to go to shows at the House of Blues on Sunset.
I was at the very last concert. I was at the very last concert there.
Wow.
Yeah. Now it's apartments, but you know, it was cool to be at those venues and to really experience like that. I mean, there's a fun story that I like to tell. I was with my dad, and we were at the Rainbow next to the Roxy. Yeah. And it was so cool because, like, you know, it was like his hangout spot, like back, you know, before he met my mom and moved up north. He was going to Northridge, and that was one of his spots. And so we go up and we're hanging out there, and there's this band playing like down in the the upstairs bar, like right there. They have this little like downstairs area, right? And I think the little upstairs thing, they have like the Johnny Depp like swing or whatever, with his band or whatever. Right. But there are these like little like 12-year-old kids where the guitar's bigger than them, and they're jamming. They're playing some like heavy metal music. It was cool. And it's like a Monday night, mind you. Yeah. Like there's nothing going on. The bar's dead. I think there was like maybe 3 or 4 people upstairs watching, this band. Right. And then they get done playing, and then like over the loudspeakers, like, and up next is Black Sabbath. And you're like, we're looking at each other like, there's no way. This is like there's no way. Or like, we finish our beer and we go start walking down the stairs, and lo and behold, here they come. No Ozzy, but they come walking up, and they like make eye contact with us, and we're like, whoa. You know what I mean? And it was a Monday night, and they're just showing up to play. Wow. I've been to the Comedy Store, and they have like, Adam Sandler and Dave Chappelle and like, all these dudes that are just showing up for a free thing. And like, that's what I loved about LA, is just having like those moments where you're like, this is really, really neat. What are some like cool moments, like, just from like doing the radio and like working with Al? Like what's like a top moment in your life where like, that's cool?
Oh, wow. I got to say the coolest moment for me was at a Brian Wilson Al Jardine show. And we were having dinner, and Brian looks at me and he says, "Hey, I want to see the piano that's on stage. Can you take me over there?" And I knew there were people sitting behind me, and I thought, oh, he must be talking to them. Mm-hmm. And I said, like, I look behind me and I go like, "Oh, you guys?" And Brian's wife, Melinda, looks at me and she goes, "Oh, no, you." And I like, "Oh, okay." And I'd never been to this theater before. It was in Modesto. Yeah. So Brian gets up, I get up. I'm like, okay, I hope I know where the piano is on stage, because I don't even know how to get to the stage. So I take Brian by the hand. I walk him down a hallway. I see a door, and I'm like, I pray this is the door that goes to the stage. I open the door, and lo and behold, it was the right door. We walk in, I see that piano, I bring him over to the piano, and he sits down at the piano. And I'm literally thinking, okay, this is my moment. Don't blow it. Like, what do you want to say? What do you want to ask him? And I don't know why this just popped in my head, but have you ever seen the BBC radio video of God Only Knows with like all these different stars?
Yeah, with like Pharrell and like all of them.
And Brian May from Queen and Dave Grohl and everyone. So I had just seen that, and Brian's sitting by the piano, and I just say to him, "Hey, Brian, that new video for God Only Knows, like you were by a piano and there was a tiger on top of the piano." And I think it was like AI or something.
I remember.
And he goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah." I go, "That was great." And he goes, "Wow, I didn't know." I go, "Yeah, that was a really cool scene." And then I said, "What was that like?" He goes, "I don't remember that." And I said, "It was great. It was brilliant,
Yeah.
And he just said like, "Wow,
Yeah.
And then I said to him, "Hey, you know where you are?" And it was at a show in Modesto. And I said to him, "You're in the birthplace of American graffiti," because that's where George Lucas was born.
Yeah.
And he said, "Wow, that's wild." And I said, and then I thought I didn't know what else to ask. Yeah. So then he just said to me, "I'm cold. Can you give me a sweater?" So I went back to his wife, and I said, "Hey, Brian's cold." And she said, "Oh, he's always cold." And she gave me a sweater. And then they did the show. And at the end of the show, right before they did the song All Summer Long, Brian goes, "Hey, you know where we are? We're in the birthplace of American graffiti." And they do All Summer Long, because I don't know if you know this, but All Summer Long is the song that's played during the end credits of the movie American Graffiti. And I thought, did he remember that from me telling him? Yeah. I mean, whether he did or not, I like to believe he did.
Yeah.
You know, and I will never forget that moment because he was just the coolest. And it was just one of those moments where I felt like, wow, I think about his history. I think about where I came from and the Beach Boys having such an impact on our lives. And I felt like at that point, our lives intersected,
Yeah.
you know, and I'll never forget that.
Yeah. My moment meeting him was really cool. I was with the people from United Recording.
Okay.
And we went to see Brian and Al's Christmas concert at the Thousand Oaks Civic Auditorium.
Yeah, it was a great
and
show.
It was crazy because we're literally like walking up to this place and there was a mile-long line of people wearing like Hawaiian shirts, just going around the block. And we just bypassed everyone, went like around security and like went into this elevator down to the green room and like went into this hallway. And just like everyone was there, like, and they're like, Blake, hi. I'm like, hey guys, you know, we're just like walking in.
Sure.
And then it was like, do you want to meet Brian? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, sure. Okay. And it was the funniest.
I don't think you ever told me this.
Yeah. It was the coolest moment because it was funny because like I turned the corner and he's getting a haircut.
Brian's getting a haircut?
He's getting a haircut before he went on stage.
Wow.
And I was like, hey, Brian. He's like, hey, you know, and it was just like, you know, just kind of this like cool moment, just like you know, a little small like interaction, and then went out and saw Al and Blondie, you know, and then you know, it was really cool because it was like my first like Brian.
And that was
Wilson.
a Christmas show?
Yeah, that was my first concert, and I was like sitting backstage watching all of this stuff. Like for my first concert. I saw that show up in Santa Rosa, and I got to say that was one of the best Brian Wilson shows ever. Yeah,
like they did all those cool Christmas songs like Winter Symphony, and it was a really cool show.
It was just really neat and just kind of like one of those moments that you just like will never forget, where you're just like, wow, I've listened to you while I was riding the Giant Dipper as like a little 13-year-old kid, you know, with my friends and stuff. And like, here you are, you know, after it's like literally the soundtrack to like my childhood, you know what I mean? Like that's what it was over there in Santa Cruz, you know? So,
and then I'll never forget, actually, I'll never forget when we met, it was down in Arroyo Grande. Al Jardine was doing a show down there.
Yeah.
And I remember you were talking to Al, and suddenly I was standing there backstage too. And suddenly Al points to me and says, like, you talk to that guy, you know?
Yep.
And I know you were talking to him about, you know, your Beach Boys movie musical idea.
Yeah.
And I remember you and your mom were there, and that was just a really cool moment when you came over, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. You know, here's my card. And
that was the beginning of the friendship.
Right.
I mean, what I loved about Al's concerts, and Al, if you're watching this is what I love about your shows, is you felt like you were sitting in his living room. And he was telling like the story of his life and the band and everything.
Right.
And that would lead into a song. And I thought it was so warming and inviting, and just meeting Al. Such a cool dude.
He's a great storyteller, and he just has so many stories to tell about the beginning of the Beach Boys and everything along the way. And you saw a really cool show because, you know, he starts off with the first song, Surfin', and just tells the whole story of how the Beach Boys started and where they went from there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's just so cool to like, just know you guys and just being you specifically being a part of that like history.
Yeah.
You know, it's wild. So I want to jump into this too. So speaking of your band, you had a really cool moment where you had Mr. Al Jardine of the Beach Boys hop on a song of yours. Want to talk about that? That was pretty cool.
Sure. So a couple of years ago, my guitarist T-Bird Tim, and I were writing a new Drifting Sand song.
What's up, Tim? He always likes these videos. I appreciate you, guy. Thank you for the likes. It helps.
Right?
Yeah.
You're watching, right, Tim?
He's watching.
Cool. So, I mean, I at the time I wanted to put out a Drifting Sand. I mean, we've been around for a few years, and I felt like we'd earned our right to put out a greatest hits album, which I still haven't done, but it's on my list.
Yeah.
So I wanted to write one new song for the greatest hits album, because I feel like you put out a greatest hits album, everyone's heard all these songs, but hey, here's a little bonus. Here's a new song you haven't heard. So I wrote this song with Tim called Best Summer Ever, and we decided we were going to record it down in Carmel. And as we're recording it, with a guy named Stevie Hager, who has also been Al Jardine's session drummer and co-producer, Al calls me up that day and asks me like, "Hey, where are you?" And I said, "Hey, we're in Carmel recording our new song, Best Summer Ever." And Al says, "Oh, can I come by?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, of course,
Yeah.
And he comes by the recording session, and then he says, "Hey, let me hear the song." And we played for him. And I know I should take more advantage of the fact that, I know him and I could ask him to do this, but I sometimes just feel like, don't take advantage of that,
Yeah.
So I play him the song and he says, "I like it. Do you want me to sing on it?" And immediately in the moment I go like, well, yeah, So I felt like I had my Brian Wilson moment where I thought, well, he's got to sing on the chorus.
Yeah.
And so then I was directing him what to sing. He nailed it in one take, which is always a sign of a pro,
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that was really, really amazing, And he's on our song, Best Summer Ever, which is available. Can I do a little plug?
Yeah, dude. Absolutely. Yeah.
On our website.
This is what this is for, man. Plug away.
On our Drifting Sand website, driftingsand.com, on our YouTube page. And somehow after this is where you come in, actually. So last summer, we were offered an opportunity to open up for Al at a show called the Big Sur Congregation down in Big Sur, where Al was going to preview some of his new songs that are coming out pretty soon. And we were opening up the show, and you were a part of this, as
it was a lot of
and you're wearing your band shirt, and I'm wearing my band shirt.
Yeah. Had to do it.
And it was just an amazing opportunity. And I remember when we were on stage, I knew that Al wasn't going to be playing until like 4 or 5 hours later, but he actually made the effort to come to the show early just to see us play. And I remember we were playing our song California Myth, which is a Drifting Sand song, basically a tribute to the Beach Boys. And I saw him walking in, and I just thought, this is so surreal. I'm singing my song about the Beach Boys, and I see Al Jardine walking in, and after the show, after our set, he said, and I still feel like, is he just saying this? But, I know him well enough to be able to tell you that when he says something, he means it. He's not just saying it to impress you. I think true friends, if you sucked as a band, they're going to tell you, "Hey, you look great, but you suck." But he said to me, "You guys are great. I think I should open the show and you guys should headline."
Wow.
Did I ever tell you that?
No.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So yeah, we released our song Best Summer Ever, and he's on it. And, it's since we did that show, that song, we did a little lyric video for that, and it's gotten over like 100,000 views on YouTube. So
Congrats.
It's, I feel like, wow, okay, I'll take that.
So I want to back up a bit.
Yeah.
So you're in the studio. Walk me through this. So you're recording. He walks in.
Mm-hmm.
So does he listen to the song one time through, and then he's just like randomly, "Hey, can I hop on this?" Or like, what was that? And then what? I'm sure when he says that to you, you're like jumping like a little kid at Christmas. You're right. You're like, oh, I'd be speechless at that.
We played him the song. I had a lyric sheet, and I knew I didn't even have to think about it, but I knew he would make sense to sing the chorus.
Yeah.
And I showed him the lyric sheet, and then I just kind of directed him a little because I knew, like, he's a pro, but at the same time, I knew I wanted the lyrics to be sung a certain way.
Yeah.
So I kind of directed him. I thought, wow, this is like my Brian Wilson Pet Sounds moment where Brian is directing Al to sing. And I thought, okay, don't get lost in this moment.
Yeah.
Just focus on, you want to get this song done, you know? So yeah, I just told him how I wanted it sung. He nailed it literally in 1 or 2 takes. And I'm really happy with the result,
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just performing,
and you're on the song too.
Yeah, it's fun.
Right,
Thank you for having me come on. I was doing the baritone parts, the Mike Love.
It was really fun recording that because, I at that point I was more focused on the project, the song, and how to make the best possible version of the song. And I knew it needed a few extra things, and what you added really, really helped the song.
Yeah, well, thank you.
And then you're welcome. And then Al's son Adam also joined in.
That's right. Yeah.
And I feel like it all just came together in a really, really cool way.
Yeah. No, it was fun. singing with you guys and, being the tambourine guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was
Well, that was on
cool.
stage.
Yeah, that was on stage. Yeah. That was on stage. But what a cool venue, by the way. Like until you approached me being like, hey, you want to sing with us in this thing? I had no idea that place even existed.
Really?
At all. And it's just really, really cool. I mean, parking's a little bit wonky, but great restaurant up the street that we ate at with a nice view of everything.
Pente, right?
Yeah. And it was just so much fun, just like being there with in the trees and just being right there by the water.
You've seen the video that we have on our website, right? Yeah. I mean, I've had multiple people tell me, I keep watching Blake because he's doing all these exciting things with like 10 different, instruments of percussion. Yeah. And he's like, he's like just so entertaining and so good job,
He's I know, make him excited, little frog.
I know he kind of threw you into a situation where it's like, hey, here's like 10 songs we're going to play and you've never heard any of them, but just, do what you feel is right for each song. And, you nailed it. So thank you.
Well, yeah. I mean, having you and Tim too, kind of, just helping really like hone that. Cause again, like what I do to like kind of like learn music is I literally had your stuff on repeat throughout the day. I'm listening to it in the car, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, editing one of these things. I had it like literally like plugged in and and doing it and just drilling it into my head. And then going back to the very beginning of this whole entire conversation, I mentioned the Beach Boys and the harmonies and really, understanding like where each harmony really fills that out for your guys' songs. And I thought we just absolutely crushed it. I think we were just so like spot on.
And I have to say, I know when it sounds right, but I really got to give credit to Tim because he knows exactly. He's kind of like the Brian Wilson of the band where he knows where each harmony needs to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tim, Great.
Thanks,
great,
Tim.
Yeah, absolutely, just like nailed on the head. It was just doing all the rehearsals and everything. I mean, we just like we punched that every time. I mean, there was on one little section I remember of one of the songs that it was a little like bump, and we drilled that with Tim and just until we just like finally like got it, and then it was just like butter. You know what I mean? So
and I got to say, I have kind of a confession about that show because I feel like when we were on stage and we had some monitor issues and I felt like, oh my God, this is not going to sound good. I can't hear myself. I can't hear my keyboards. They're either too loud or I can't hear them at all. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, everyone was saying like, wow, you guys are great. And I was thinking like, I guess it's better that you didn't think you were good, but everyone else thought you were than the opposite, right? Because then when I watch the video, I'm like, oh, we actually sounded pretty good,
Yeah.
And it's like, I know when you play live, there's so many variables and you just never know what's going to happen. And you just have to the key is just practice enough so that you know your music inside out so that if there's like variables like, hey, I can't hear myself on stage, well, at least I still know what to play, and I know how to sing.
Yeah.
And, if there's any bands watching this, it's like, just know your music and just practice your heart out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was, you're absolutely spot on. It was such a fun time. Just being able to like be a part of that. So thank you again. And,
of course.
And Tim and Al, it was cool seeing you again and then having, I mean, how cool, like, dude, what? No, I mean, just like, oh yeah, like randomly call, do you want to be on the song? Sure. Okay. And then I'm singing on a song with you with a Beach Boy. And I'm like, I'm on a track with the Beach Boy. And I'm like, what? Like, that's cool. And then you're calling me up. Hey, we're going to open for him. Do you want to, and I'm just like, dude, like, count me in, man.
Sometimes these things just come together, like
going to your point in the beginning. It's just sometimes things just kind of happen. But like, what a cool moment to just like have like in your life, you know what I mean? Just being able to be like, yeah, that's neat. And then like you're great friends with them too.
Oh, I was just telling someone actually an example of when there's a really cool show in town and I drive up there and I get parking right in front of the venue and people ask me like, well, how do you get that rock star parking? And I said, I just went for it,
Yeah.
And I just think like, it's just a good analogy of like in life, just go for it. You never know what's going to happen. Don't hesitate. Don't think like, oh no, I can't get that. Just go for it,
Yeah.
Because it's like, you never know what you can get. we've opened up actually for Dick Dale a few times. Dick Dale is the king of the surf guitar. He started surf music in the late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
And, and people ask me, how do you get the opening slot for Dick Dale? And I said, I asked,
Yeah.
and you just never know. So I just want to encourage, if you're in a band, just go for it because you never know,
Yeah. I think one of the fun moments with you too was hanging out with Dean.
Oh, yeah.
From Jan and Dean, and my folks were there too.
Right.
And on my mom's episode, you guys can go back and watch that. There's a picture. My mom was Miss Santa Clara County,
right.
And she had the crown, and she was performing with them back in the day. And when we were going there, I was like, Mom, you should bring the picture and see if he remembers. It's, it was that whole moment. She's like, I don't know. I'm like, just bring it. And so she brings it, and we're backstage, hanging out with him. And she's like, you remember this? And he's like, honestly, there were so many women, But it was cool because he signed the photo, and then we all took a photo together, while my mom was holding the photo. So it was kind of a fun, full circle,
of course.
moment and everything. But it's just this is what I love about this state, is just because there's so much history here with everything. We're in Silicon Valley with all the tech stuff that happened. I literally had Ed Lambert on here, my uncle.
Oh, yeah,
literally,
yeah.
And he grew up right across the street from Wozniak's, being down in LA, and then eventually going through that whole thing with the Sounds of Summer musical and meeting you, and
of course.
Meeting everybody is just it's just so cool, because I don't think that would happen anywhere else in the world besides
Probably
California.
not.
And then this is kind of fun. So I did not know that this world existed at all until you introduced me to it.
Uh-oh.
Can you tell everybody what Tiki Oasis is about? I thought that was the coolest thing. It was so I had no idea it existed. And then going there, you're just this is it's really neat. It was cool. Talk about it a little bit.
All right. So I don't know how this started. I think when I was first moving into my place, I found a cool piece of rattan furniture that I liked, and I bought it. It was probably at a thrift store.
Yeah.
And I just started getting into the whole tiki culture, everything from, Disneyland's Enchanted Tiki Room to just the music of Martin Denny and Arthur Lyman, and just the whole tiki world. And then I felt like I was just drawn into this world. And then I found out there's this annual tiki festival in San Diego called Tiki Oasis, and I knew the people who started this. And one year they were doing a new wave 80s theme. And the creator, Otto von Stroheim, he asked me, hey, Spud, do you want to play this year? Because I think he knew that our band was kind of surf, but also kind of 80s new wave.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I'd love to play it, And we played Tiki Oasis. That was in 2019.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's an annual event that happens in San Diego. This year is actually their 25th anniversary.
This year?
This year, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. And I know that year, because we'd already known each other, I asked, hey, Blake, can you come and film us,
Yeah.
And we were just stoked to play it.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's a really fun festival. It happens every year in San Diego, first week of August. And it's just all things tiki, Hawaiian, between everything from different bands, different symposiums, different pool party scenes, bands that are playing.
Yeah.
And it's just a really, really fun festival that happens every year, in San Diego. So
yeah, it was really fun. The second time we went too, I was working for, I was doing TikTok videos for Trader Vic's. Right. If you're watching,
right.
How you doing, dude? And for those of you who don't know what Trader Vic's is, I'll give them a nice little plug here. They're really high end, real good Hawaiian food, 5-star. They're so good. And they are famous because they are the creators of the Mai Tai.
That's where the Mai Tai was invented.
That's where the Mai Tai was invented.
Right.
And they have the same font as Trader Joe's, and Trader Joe's took the font. They're like, yeah, you guys can just use it. I guess that was the story.
Sure.
And then Trader Joe's blew up, and they didn't think twice about it. So you'll see Trader Vic's and Trader Joe's has the same font and everything.
Right.
But yeah, what a fun event though. Tiki Oasis. It was really cool, especially because my dad's closet he collects these
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like it's just he's got like hundreds of them,
Right,
and so
right.
it's like we bringing him there to like see you
Right,
got,
right,
it was like
right.
fun like going through there and seeing like the whole convention center with all the different like the tiki
He was blown
elements.
away, wasn't he?
He was blown away. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like right up his alley, and it's just like I never in my life, if I had never met you, would never have known about Tiki Oasis, and I just thought that was like such a cool thing. And what was the band?
And you were actually working the Trader Vic's table, right?
Yeah. I was going around and doing TikToks for
Right,
them and
right,
filming
right.
with the different mugs that they're like creating.
It's just a fun world to be a part of. That's why I love Tiki Oasis.
Yeah. It's such a cool thing. So with Drifting Sands, what's the future here? I know we kind of talk about it, but like, are you going to be? Is there a new album coming out? You guys working on new stuff? Like, what's going on? I know
Actually,
you got.
I don't want to run out of time and forget to say this, but can I just say, because of the day that is today, Happy Mother's Day.
Oh yeah. Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day to your awesome mom. Who's like a vocal teacher and just always full of energy and good vibes.
Yeah.
And my mom, who passed away in 2017.
Happy Mother's Day to Spud's mom.
Happy Mother's Day.
And to all the moms out there watching, I know this is probably going to come out like a week or so later, but happy Mother's Day,
But I was just thinking of, because I know, it's just, I know that a lot of people, they can celebrate their moms today, but some people might not have their moms. And I just want to share a dream I had.
Yeah.
In 2017 is when my mom passed away at the age of 93. And in 2018, my band got the opening slot for Badfinger. And that was in San Francisco. And a few, I think it was like a week or two before we actually did the show, I had a dream where I was at the venue. It was called the Chapel in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And I was on stage and we were doing a sound check. And I just, we were just making sure that we sound good. And I remember looking out and there was no one in the audience because it was sound check. But I remember I saw my mom in the corner of the venue. And at the time I remember thinking, wait a second, my mom passed away last year, right? So in my dream, after we're done with sound check, I walk over to my mom and I say, hi, Mom. And she says, hi. And I said, I thought you were, and I didn't want to say the word because I just don't like the D word, But before I could say the word, she just says, oh, I am. That doesn't mean I can't come to your shows anymore. And I just remember waking up from that dream feeling like, wow, just because you lose someone, it doesn't mean they're not with you anymore.
Yeah.
It was just a really, really cool feeling. And to anyone who has lost their mom and might feel sad, on Mother's Day, I just want to say your mom is always with you.
Yeah.
And it's like, just cherish the fact that she was your mom and you had her in your life for as long as you did. And in your dreams, she will live forever.
Yeah. She, my mom was talking about that too. Cause, I call her Ama, it was my grandmother. She passed away. And we had her memorial service at the Chaminade at Santa Cruz.
Oh yeah.
And, my mom talked about how, Blanche came to her in a dream too, and with everything. And, Blanche was going through dementia and, and that's what, that's what ended up, with her passing. But yeah, she came to my mom in a dream and it's just like, I'm sorry you had to go through that and I love you and I'm okay on this side and, you're going to be fine and, all that stuff. And so I totally believe in that stuff.
It just makes me think that dreams are so powerful,
Oh yeah.
And it's almost like you can tap into just like this other world where they're
other
not,
reality,
they're
other
not
world,
gone.
yeah.
They're still with you,
Oh yeah.
And I think if nothing else, it helps you get through the day because you realize you lose them, but they're still with you. It's not the end,
I mean, kind of like fun story from like my family. Whenever a relative family member has passed away, we always tell them to like put a rainbow up in the sky or flicker with the lights.
Yeah.
And the day that my dad's mom passed away, we told her, play with the lights or whatever.
Sure.
And so we have the chandelier that's right above the table right there in our kitchen.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So for the science people, when you turn it on, I forget the terminology, but all the lights go on at the same time. So you can't mess with the individual bulbs. It's the light switch goes on. It does. All of them started. We were all sitting there at the dinner table, and all of them started going on and off at different times. That's one. When other family members have died, rainbows have popped up. The big one was when my mom's dad passed away. He was Bob. He was running KNTV Channel 11. He was the general manager here, big news TV, guy that NBC eventually ended up taking it over.
Right.
And so the NBC Bay Area, that was his station back in the day. So he was like one of the founding fathers of cable television, right?
Right.
And so when he passed away back in 2008, we were, I had the day off from school. I was standing there at his bedside, and we watched him go. And this random nurse came in. She's like, "Hey, I know you guys don't know me, but Bob wanted me to tell you that you need to go outside and look up." And we went outside, and there was a triple rainbow.
Wow.
All connected, going across the hospital.
Yeah.
And the next day, the front cover of the Santa Cruz Sentinel was a picture of that triple rainbow, and we still have it.
Wow.
So I totally believe in all of that stuff. So yeah, to those of you who that have lost their moms, we're with you. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. It was a fun day. We went down to this restaurant called Chocolate in downtown Santa Cruz. It's interesting. I've been there one time before, but they had a really good a chocolate assortment. Really good eats, But happy Mother's Day to everyone.
Happy Mother's Day. I feel like moms rule. Moms are forever, and just don't ever forget them because they live on in our hearts forever.
Yeah. Well, Spud.
So you had a question. Oh, are we out of time?
No, we're good, man. What
right. No, you had a question.
Yeah, with Drifting Sands. What's you have any new songs coming out? Are you working on anything? Or
we are kind of.
I know you have your anniversary one that you wanted to do. You have
no, like I said, we've put out 3 albums over the years. I feel like I've earned the right to say we're going to put out a greatest hits album. Although I kind of want to call it our greatest hit album. Yeah. Because I feel like we only have one hit, And that was a song actually called Surfing with Britney.
Yeah.
That came out, at around the turn of the millennium.
That was a fun one. We actually sang that
at
the show down in Big Sur.
And I actually have to tell you that at the time when I was still working the radio station, and I knew the radio rep who worked for Jive Records, which was Britney Spears' label. And I said, "Hey, can you give her this song?" And they gave her the song. And
she get back to you?
They gave her a CD single of our song. And I said, "Oh, what did she say anything?" And she looked at the cover and she said, "Well, those guys are cute." And she told me, "Yeah, but she was with Justin Timberlake at the time."
Oh man, that's where you gotta swoop in, dude.
Right?
That's where you gotta swoop in.
So I don't know. I want to believe that at least she was aware of us for a moment in time.
Yeah.
And I think we might still re-record that song because I feel like there was a demo version of that song and then there was the album version. But I feel like we can still do it. We can still record that song one version better.
Yeah.
So if we put out a greatest hits album, it'll have Surfing with Britney, the 2025 or 2026 mix.
Yeah.
And it'll be, the definitive version.
Yeah. I have a Britney Spears story. This is fun.
Oh no.
So nothing bad, but it was fun. I was with, I think I was 13, 14 years old. And I was with my folks and my sister, and we were flying back from Maui. We went on a family vacation out there.
Okay.
And I think it was the time my dad and my mom renewed their vows, and we went to was it Maui? We went to Kauai, then Maui. They renewed their vows on they redid the whole Blue Hawaii scene with Elvis.
With Elvis?
Where they're like, we went to the Coco Palms
awesome.
Hotel and they were we have it on VHS somewhere. I gotta find it and upload it because it's super cool. We all were wearing like matching Hawaiian shirts, and Blair and I were sitting on the front of the little like, boat as they were like paddling it down that river.
I know
and then
scene.
my dad and my mom were singing, like all the Elvis stuff from the movie, and they got it all on film. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But as we were coming back, we went to Maui, and then as we were coming back, at the time, Brittany had a little sister still has a little sister named Jamie. And she had a show on Nickelodeon called Zoe 101. And and I was like, she is cute as all heck. And she looked exactly like Brittany. And I'm like, she's like my age, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, Brittany was like a little bit older than me,
I don't know where you're going with this.
So we get on the plane, and I literally in first class, like Jamie Spears is sitting right there, and Brittany's in the middle row, and Brittany has a magazine in front of her face. And I literally like look down, I'm like, I'm starstruck, and I'm like, because she's like my celebrity crush. Everyone's like, who's your celebrity crush? Back in the day, Jamie Lynn Spears.
Was it Jamie or Brittany?
Both of them.
Oh my god!
Both of them.
Look at you.
And I literally looked down. I said, Jamie? And she looks up at me. She goes, hi. And I'm like, hi. As I'm like walking by, and I'm going all the way back to Coach, And so
I'll be back there.
And so, I kind of felt like Leo, like on the Titanic, you know what I mean? Working his way up to first class.
Right. That's hilarious.
It's like an hour into the flight.
Right.
And I'm like, I have to say something. And so I'm in the aisle seat, and I look down, I'm like, Jamie. And she looks down. I'm like, can I come up there? She's like, yeah, come on. I'm like, so I go right up to first class, and I kid you not, I'm like on a knee, just totally sideways. So I'm making as less of space as possible, people can still get by and the cart can still get by.
Right.
And I literally talk with her for the remainder of the flight. We're just talking, and Brittany has the magazine in front of her face, and she keeps like side-eyeing me, like, who the heck is this guy? And like, I looked at her, and I kind of like waved, and she smiled. I didn't want to like, bother her. I was just talking with Jamie, and then then all of a sudden, like over the, we had this great conversation, and all of a sudden, like over the loudspeaker, they're like, okay, you have to sit down. Like, we're getting ready to and I get back to my seat, and as I'm sitting down and the wheels hit the tarmac, I'm like, I should have asked her for her number. And I'm like, what was I doing? And so as we're like,
you just went back to your seat?
We just went back. I said bye. It's like, nice talking to you.
See you later, Jamie.
Yeah. And I went back to my seat, and as the plane hit the tarmac, I'm like, crap, I should have asked her for her number. And so like, everyone's getting up and grabbing their luggage. And I'm like, Dad, he's like, go get her. Go. And I'm just like, I'm like, I don't know. So we get off the plane. I'm like trying to and she ends up going with Brittany into like some VIP area where I couldn't get in. But like, that was my moment with Brittany and Jamie Spears. And I was just like, shoot. Another lifetime, you just got to ask, man. You got to ask for the number. Don't be afraid. You just got to do it. What a trip though. But that's, dude, that's cool that she got to see your stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
for what it's worth, I've never been interested in going out with Brittany. I just wanted to go surfing with her. Just for the record.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go surfing with Brittany.
For the record. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. She's going to be watching this being like,
right,
hey, Mr. Spud. Well, cool, dude. This was fun. Thank you.
Are we done?
I mean, we can keep going if you want to keep going. I'm cool to keep going, dude.
I've lost track of time.
We got all the time in the world. You know what I mean?
Has this been an hour?
It's been an hour.
Really?
Let's keep going. You know what? Let's just dive into it. Star Wars. Let's go. Let's go.
That's another hour.
Let's just do it. Let's dive into it. So now we're getting to the deep cuts. So
are you sure you want to go down to Star Wars?
Let's go into the deep cuts. We're here, man. We're here. So let's talk about it. Okay. So what were your thoughts when everyone found out that Vader was Luke's father? When you were in the theaters watching that moment? Because when I saw it, I was like, oh snap. Oh snap.
I got a story.
You got a story?
So after The Empire Strikes Back, I used to go to this science fiction store in San Mateo, called Star Trek Federation, I think it's called. I think. Don't quote me on that.
We're not quoting him on that.
Yeah. And the guy who worked there was like a science fiction, just, he knew everything. He got everything. And he got a copy of the script for The Empire Strikes Back. And he said, hey, do you want to buy a copy of this? And then obviously he just probably made copies. And I'm like, well, yeah. So I read the entire script for The Empire Strikes Back before the movie came out. But at the end, where Vader and Luke, are doing their lightsaber duel, in the script, it doesn't say, Luke, I am your father. It says, insert dialogue B here. George Lucas was so protective of that, that he didn't want any of the staff to even know about that for fear of it leaking. So that was a total surprise when you saw that in the theater.
Yeah.
And
I remember reading that.
Right.
Yeah.
So then when I saw the movie, I'm like, whoa, really? And what's your question?
Star Wars, man. What were your thoughts when you like saw that in theaters?
Well, my first thought was,
were you like you knew because you read the script already? Did you know that there was not that line, but
no, because I didn't know what that line was.
Well, yeah. Were you thinking like, what are they going to say? Like, were you thinking like, what are they going to say? What could be so monumental here that they didn't put it in? And then all of a sudden it hits and you're just
I knew it was an important line. I didn't anticipate that. So as far as surprises go, I was shocked, And my first thought was, well, it's Darth Vader. He lies. That's a lie, And then, of course, Return of the Jedi comes out and it's not a lie. And that's a whole different conversation. But at the time, I didn't believe it. I thought, no, that can't be,
And then, so, what were your thoughts too that episode 4 is the first one to come out? Were you thinking like, why isn't 1, 2, and 3 there beforehand? Do you ever wonder that? Do you ever wonder why they start? Why do you start with 4?
No. George Lucas has said that he wanted to start with episode 4 because that's more exciting to the fans, and then he wanted to go back and tell the backstory with the prequels.
Was that weird to you at all, or were you like, I'm on board with George?
Well, I'll only say the weird part is in the way it looks. I feel like if I was a kid and now I'd watch episodes 1 through 9, starting with 1, I'd be like, I'd watch the first 3 and be like, okay, those are cool. And then you get to episode 4. Wait, why does it suddenly look like the 70s, with their hairstyles and everything? So I feel like I kind of wish Lucas had planned this out better and just had a vision for the entire saga, because he originally said this is going to be like the Buck Rogers and the Flash Gordon serials. It'll be one chapter. It'll end in a cliffhanger. You're not going to know what happens. Then we go into the next chapter. And I wish that he had laid out the entire saga, episodes 1 through 9, in one shot, and then just made them look so that there needs to be continuity between the look and the feeling of the films.
So I want to talk about something because I thought it was pretty cool. When Obi-Wan fights Vader in the original flick right there, right? Which episode?
4.
It was 4.
A New Hope.
It was 4. I felt like from watching, because, when episode 1 came out and the choreography for that fight scene with Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn,
right?
I thought that was top tier. I think still to this day, I think that is by far like one of the, I think, if not the best lightsaber duel out of the entire series.
I agree. Yeah.
So when you see that, and then you go back to episode 4,
right,
and then they're just kind of going like this.
That's the problem when you shoot the prequels 15 years after.
Correct. So have you seen the fan edit of the reimagination of that lightsaber duel?
Yes.
I thought
that was
so badass.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, someone, it may be sacrilegious, but I would love to see that movie with that cut in just to sit there and watch it in full.
I mean, the whole saga could be reimagined, re-edited so that it just looks, there's a consistent look in the vibe, in the feeling, the flavor, just the vibe from episode 1 through episode 9. Because I feel like in the prequels, you have George Lucas's vision, but they don't look like Star Wars. In the Disney sequels, you have the right look, but you don't have Lucas's story anymore. So that's kind of like my problem with Star Wars.
I heard, because I want to go back to the prequels and the sequels and talk about that, but I heard, because they're doing another trilogy.
They are?
Yes. They're because
Disney?
Because Rey is now starting the new Jedi Order and the new temple, supposedly.
Right.
But I watched a little interview from her, and she said that she hasn't read the script, but she mentioned George.
Oh, interesting.
And he's writing it. But she didn't say George Lucas, but she said George, as I'm assuming it's George Lucas.
Another George.
Right?
Right.
And so I read some rumors too that he came back to really bring it back to its.
Okay.
So if he has his name on it and he is indeed writing this I think there's a new hope. Right?
I just want to say, Disney, if you're watching this podcast right now, just put Jon Favreau in charge of everything. Because between The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he gets it, you know? And Rogue One was a great movie.
Oh, excellent.
I might stand alone here, but I loved Solo.
I love Solo too. I didn't understand the hate from it. I absolutely loved it.
Did this backstory need to be told? Maybe not. But Solo really captures the look and the feel of the original Star Wars.
Yep.
And that's what I love about it.
Yep. What I love too is that from the, and this is just for Hayden Christensen too, he got a lot of flack from those prequels.
Sure.
And now everybody worships him like he's a god. It's just from him coming back from the Obi-Wan stuff and like doing all of that.
Yeah.
Everybody, he's just, and I love it because he deserves it, because I personally maybe some of the dialogue in episode 2 was a little wonky.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed like all of that. I thought it was really cool, you know?
I think fans should never forget that Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker in his teen years, it was an awkward time. So if his lines feel awkward, that was because he was going through an awkward phase of his life, you know?
Yeah. And that whole, you know, it was interesting, you know, kind of like I remember watching that for the first time, and I know, what is it, the 25th or the 20th anniversary that's out right now? It's
20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith.
Which I told you we should go see in the theater. But
No, I'm down. I think one of the moments watching that was when you're seeing the poster for it, and they're starting to show Vader's face in it, like the iconic mask. Sitting there at the beginning of the movie, you're like, how is he going to get to that? Because I remember from the original, you know, where Luke takes is the helmet off and he's breathing. He's like, I want to see you with my own eyes.
Sure.
And you see these scars and he's all like burned and you're like how is it going to lead to that? And then when they go to, for all the Star Wars people are going to hate me, the fire, the magma, the planet, where he has his temple and stuff, where Obi-Wan and him have the fight. God, I'm going to get so much flack for this. I should know this. And then you're just like, something's going to happen here, you know? And you just see, and I think the Darth Maul fight, and I think that fight were probably, again, one of the best lightsaber duels in that whole entire, and it's weird because I'll say this about the sequels that Disney did. I don't think any of those lightsaber fights even came close to the Anakin fight with Obi-Wan or the Obi-Wan fight with Darth Maul. I think the choreography that they did on the prequels was just, I'm like, that's what I want to see. Like when it's just, and they're like, going quick and stuff like that,
I think that's a whole other podcast.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But like seeing that moment where, and it just, you got chills from it, where, he goes into the fire and he starts turning, and then there's that moment where you're seeing the contrasting imagery of Anakin, where he's, all burnt to a crisp, and he's getting the robotic, limbs put on, to seeing Padme, giving birth to Luke and Leia, and she's all in white and he's all in black. And then there's that moment where you've been waiting for it the entire time. Right. And he rises up and you hear the, oh, and then it's just like, and then the helmet seals and you hear the,
I mean, if nothing else, if nothing else, it feels like it makes you just understand Darth Vader and where he came from better, because it's like he was a Jedi and he loved Padme, and, it's like his mind couldn't quite accept what was happening, and he just got lured to the dark side, and then you just think that, wow, this is where it ended up,
Yeah. I think one of those great moments too, there are two other moments that I really like. One was from the Obi-Wan series with Vader, and then at Rogue One. Spoilers if you haven't seen Rogue One, skip a little bit because we're going to dive into it.
Who hasn't seen Rogue One?
I don't know, man. I'm always like popping up. I'm seeing TikToks of people watching, Star Wars for the first time. They're going like, what? And they're like filming the reaction.
Don't spoil it. Really? That movie came out 10 years ago.
But I thought they did it so well, where they got the plans for the Death Star, and they're passing it, and the door closes, and they're all pulling up their guns, and you didn't see a lightsaber for the entire movie, and then all of a sudden you just hear this, and then just boom, there's the Vader in all his glory with the red lightsaber. The last
20 minutes of Rogue One is just epic.
Yeah, and you just see him just going to town, and it bounces back to seeing Obi-Wan, and literally there's this. I remember this scene, and it's where he and Obi first fought in the show, right? Where they literally he's trying to get Obi-Wan to come out and face him, and he's walking through the city, and he just with the Force just grabs some woman and is dragging her through the dirt, and you hear her screaming, and then he snaps her neck, and I'm like, I want a whole entire thing, done like, with this. So, but
by the way, I have to say, as much as I love Star Wars, I gotta put in the good word for Battlestar Galactica. If you've never watched it, watch the original series first from 78, 79. Yeah, that's going way back.
Yeah.
But then watch the reimagined show from 2003 to 2008. And I kind of feel sometimes it's everything I wanted Star Wars to be, but wasn't, where you could watch the original pilot and you could watch the last episode in season 4.5, and you'll be like, I can't tell which was filmed first. The continuity is beautiful. The story is epic. And just the whole concept is pretty amazing, because they're basically predicting AI like 20 years before it's actually happening.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, wow, all of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again.
Yep.
So say we all.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to be it for this episode, Spud. Thank you so much for coming on. And thank all of you for watching. Make sure you
Can I look at the camera now?
Yeah, there you go. Make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you next time.
DriftingSand.com.
Yep.
That's my plug.
Yep. We'll put it all in the description below.
Cool.
All right. See you guys. Bye.
Thank you.